Kevin Hart was kicked out of a high-end car dealership, but his comeback shocked everyone. Find out how he dealt with the humiliation and turned the situation in his favor. Watch to the end and share this video to support equal rights for all. Kevin Hart leaned back on the plush leather of his living room couch, the faint hum of the television playing in the background. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls, the rhythm of a life constantly in motion. The world knew him as a comedic genius, a master of turning life's absurdities into laughter, but few understood the price of that relentless hustle. Kevin hadn't stopped working for years. Films, stand-up specials, promotional tours. His calendar was packed so tightly that the mere thought of downtime felt foreign. He sighed, running a hand over his closely cropped hair. Despite the success, the accolades, and the money, there was a gnawing sense of emptiness, a craving for something that wasn't just another project. He wanted to celebrate himself, to acknowledge the countless hours of work that had gotten him to this point. A symbol of success, not for anyone else, but for him. And then, like a flash of light in a darkened room, it came to him. A car. Not just any car, but the kind that had filled his dreams as a teenager growing up in Philadelphia. Back then, his family could barely make ends meet, and the thought of owning a sleek, luxurious vehicle was as distant as the stars. He remembered the older kids in the neighborhood with their hand-me-down sedans, sometimes with mismatched doors, sometimes with engines that sputtered and groaned. Kevin had stared at glossy magazines in the corner store, flipping through pages of gleaming Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Those cars weren't just vehicles. They were statements, symbols of having made it. Now, standing at the pinnacle of his career, he felt the pull to finally make that dream real. The decision set his heart racing. He could already picture himself walking into a top-tier showroom, the kind that radiated exclusivity. It wasn't about showing off. It was about claiming a piece of the world he had fought so hard to be part of. He imagined running his fingers along the smooth curves of a sports car, inhaling the intoxicating smell of new leather, hearing the low purr of an engine that promised freedom and power. Yes, it was time. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual, a rare pocket of free time carved into his schedule. Dressing casually in a fitted black hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, he didn't aim to draw attention to himself. He wanted the moment to be personal, unpretentious. His assistant had mentioned a luxury car showroom in Beverly Hills, a place renowned for its collection of rare and high-end vehicles. That's where he'd start. As he approached the showroom, Kevin was struck by its sheer opulence. The exterior was a blend of glass and chrome, reflecting the bright California sun like a jewel. He stepped inside, and the air was cooler, almost perfumed with an expensive scent that hinted at wealth and exclusivity. The floor was a polished expanse of marble, so pristine it looked as though it had never been touched. Cars, each a masterpiece of engineering and design, were displayed like art in a gallery. Their curves caught the light, accentuating every detail, from the aerodynamic contours to the intricate stitching on the leather interiors. Kevin took a moment to absorb the scene. It was everything he had imagined, yet being here felt surreal. He approached a sleek red sports car in the center of the room. The paint gleamed like molten fire, and the chrome accents reflected his wide-eyed expression. For a moment, he forgot himself, running his fingers lightly over the hood. "Can I help you?" The voice was crisp, clipped, and immediately broke the spell. Kevin turned to see a young man in a tailored navy suit. His expression was polite, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Skepticism. Kevin smiled. Yeah, just admiring the beauty here. What's the story on this one? The salesman's lips curled slightly, not into a smile, but something closer to a smirk. The story? Well, sir, this is the kind of car for someone who knows exactly what they're looking for. It's not really for browsing. Kevin raised an eyebrow but kept his tone light. Good thing I'm not just browsing then. Let's talk specs. The salesman's demeanor shifted subtly, his eyes scanning Kevin from head to toe. The hoodie, the jeans, the sneakers. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Of course. But just to be clear, these aren't entry-level vehicles. They're for serious buyers. Kevin chuckled, though there was an edge to it. Trust me, I'm serious. But the salesman wasn't done. Well, we like to make sure our clientele understands what they're getting into. These vehicles start in the mid-six-figure range. Kevin felt the sting of the words, not because he couldn't afford it, but because of what they implied. Before he could respond, another voice joined the conversation. He's right, you know. It was a man in a sharp gray suit, another customer admiring a nearby car. He looked at Kevin with a condescending smile. These cars aren't for everyone. Maybe stick to your usual set of wheels. Kevin's jaw tightened. He was no stranger to veiled insults, to the assumptions people made about him based on how he looked or what they thought they knew about him. His mind flashed back to moments in his childhood when shopkeepers had followed him around stores, assuming he was there to steal, not to buy. The weight of those memories, coupled with the current humiliation, pressed down on him. He took a deep breath. Snapping back wouldn't change their minds. It would only reinforce their prejudice. Instead, he stepped back from the car and nodded. Thanks for the info. I'll think about it. The salesman seemed pleased to have dismissed him. Of course. Let us know if you need anything else. Kevin turned and walked out, his head held high, but inside his emotions churned. Anger, frustration, and a tinge of sadness fought for dominance. He replayed the encounter in his mind, each comment stinging more than the last. This wasn't just about a car. It was about respect, about being seen for who he truly was, not for who they assumed him to be. As he drove away, his grip tightened on the steering wheel. He wouldn't let this moment define him. If anything, it fueled a fire within him, a determination to turn this experience into something greater. But how? The answer would come soon enough. Kevin Hart sat at the island counter in his spacious kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. He couldn't shake the sour taste left by his visit to the car showroom. It wasn't just the comments, the veiled insults, the smug condescension. It was what they represented. After all he had accomplished, after clawing his way up from nothing, he was still reduced in their eyes to a stereotype. A man who didn't belong. He tapped his fingers on the marble counter, the rhythm quick and uneven, reflecting the thoughts racing through his mind. The silence in the house was broken by the sound of a door opening. His close friend and longtime collaborator, Marcus, walked in, carrying a bag of takeout. "You've been brooding all morning," Marcus said, setting the bag down and pulling out a box of food. "What happened? I thought you were excited about checking out that car showroom." Kevin exhaled, a sharp breath that carried more frustration than he intended. "I was. Until I got treated like I was wasting their time, like I didn't belong there. It was some next-level condescension, man." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What? They didn't know who you were?" "That's the thing," Kevin said, leaning forward. "They didn't. And you know what? I'm glad they didn't, because it just showed me how they really treat people who don't fit their idea of worthy." It wasn't about me being Kevin Hart. It was about me being me, a black guy walking into their pristine little world. Marcus's expression darkened. Man, that's some real trash. But what do you expect from those places? They cater to a specific crowd, and it ain't us. Kevin shook his head. And that's the problem. It's not just them. It's everywhere. Every day, people get judged like that, dismissed, disrespected, and they can't just walk away and laugh it off like I'm supposed to. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Kevin's words hanging in the air. Then Marcus spoke, his voice steady. So, what are you going to do about it? Kevin looked up, his eyes narrowing as an idea began to take shape. You're right. I can't just let this slide, but I don't want to just call them out. I want to show people what's really going on. I want to make them see it for themselves. Marcus leaned back, nodding slowly. All right, I'm listening. What's the plan? Kevin grinned, the fire in his eyes replacing the earlier frustration. A social experiment. I'll go back there, but this time I'll have cameras, hidden ones. I want to capture everything, how they act, what they say, how they treat me compared to others. I want people to see it. Not just hear about it, but see it. Marcus's grin mirrored Kevin's. Man, that's bold. You sure you're ready for that kind of heat? Ready? Kevin said, his voice firm. I was born ready. Later that evening, Kevin called his team together. It wasn't just about the logistics of setting up the experiment. It was about creating something that could spark real conversations. The team gathered in his home office, laptops open and notebooks at the ready. Tasha, his producer, was the first to speak. So, let me get this straight, she said, her pen tapping against her notebook. You want to go back to this showroom with hidden cameras and record how they treat you. And then, what? Post it online? Exactly, Kevin said. But it's not just about me. This isn't some gotcha moment. It's about showing what a lot of people face every day. If this is how they act with me, imagine how they treat someone without my platform or resources. Tasha nodded, her expression thoughtful. We'll need to plan this carefully. Hidden cameras, microphones, a way to capture everything without tipping them off. And you'll need to stay in character, no slipping up and reminding them who you are. Kevin smirked. Don't worry, I've got that part covered. I've played roles way harder than this. The planning stretched late into the night. They discussed every detail, the angles for the cameras, the timing, the questions Kevin would ask to elicit the kind of responses they were looking for. It wasn't enough to capture the behavior. They needed to make it undeniable. At one point, Marcus chimed in with an idea. What if you go in twice? First, as yourself, dressed down, casual like the first time. Then you go back, but this time you bring the whole entourage. Flashy suit, luxury watch, everything. Let them see the difference when they know who they're dealing with. Kevin leaned back in his chair, considering it. I like it. It'll show the contrast even more. But let's make sure the first visit is airtight. That's the one that matters most. As the meeting wound down, the mood in the room was a mix of determination and excitement. This wasn't just a stunt, it was a statement. Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clarity he hadn't experienced in a while. After everyone left, Kevin stayed up, scrolling through the comments on his latest social media post. The video, where he had shared his experience at the showroom, had gone viral, with thousands of people chiming in with their own stories of discrimination. One comment caught his eye. It's not just about cars. It's about being seen as less than. We all deserve respect, no matter where we are or what we look like. Kevin stared at the words for a long moment. They resonated deeply, fueling his resolve. This experiment wasn't just about proving a point. It was about standing up for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. He closed his laptop, a small smile playing on his lips. The plan was in motion, and he couldn't wait to see it through. Tomorrow he would start preparing for the visit that would change everything. The morning of Kevin's return to the luxury car showroom dawned crisp and clear, the California sun rising over the horizon, casting long golden rays over the hills. Kevin lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, his mind already replaying the plan over and over. Today wasn't just about proving a point, it was about vindication, not just for himself, but for all those who had ever been dismissed or belittled. After his conversation with the team, the excitement of planning had kept him awake for hours. He'd spent the night thinking about the many people who had faced similar experiences, and how this stunt was his way of standing up for them. The energy in him was electric. But today, there was a tension, a nervous kind of thrill mixed with determination. He knew he was walking into the lion's den again, but this time the cameras would be rolling. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, the cool floor beneath his feet, a reminder that this day had finally arrived. The weight of the situation pressed on him, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. He was ready. After dressing in a simple hoodie and jeans, keeping his appearance identical to his first visit, he glanced in the mirror. Nothing flashy, nothing that said celebrity, just Kevin Hart, a man who could be anyone off the street. That was the point. Downstairs, Marcus and Tasha were already waiting. Marcus looked up from his phone, giving Kevin a nod. "You ready for this?" he asked, his voice carrying an undercurrent of excitement. Kevin smirked. "Ready as I'll ever be. Let's do it." The drive to Beverly Hills was quiet, filled with the kind of stillness that precedes something momentous. Marcus and Tasha rode with him, while the rest of the team followed in another vehicle, carrying the necessary equipment, hidden cameras, microphones, every piece of gear they'd need to ensure they captured every second. Marcus, usually the jokester in the group, was unusually focused, scrolling through the setup checklist one more time. "Remember," Tasha said from the back seat, her voice calm and professional, "the key is to not let on. No matter what they say, just keep it cool. We need them to be themselves, the way they were last time." Kevin nodded. "I got it. Trust me, I know exactly how this game is played." As they approached the showroom, Kevin's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He could see it up ahead, the sleek glass facade shimmering in the morning light, as pristine and unwelcoming as before. He pulled into the parking lot, letting out a slow breath as he killed the engine. "You ready for this, Hart?" Marcus asked, his eyes meeting Kevin's in the rearview mirror. Kevin flashed a smile, though his eyes were serious. More than ready. They stepped out of the car, Marcus and Tasha hanging back just far enough to avoid drawing attention. Kevin's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the doors of the showroom. He felt the familiar cocktail of emotions, anticipation, determination, and a tinge of that old, unwelcome anger. He pushed the door open, the cool air conditioning greeting him as he stepped inside. The showroom looked exactly as it had before. Pristine, the cars gleaming under the bright showroom lights, the polished marble floors reflecting every detail. It was like stepping back into the same moment, only this time he wasn't alone. He could feel the presence of his team, even though they kept their distance, hidden just out of sight. Kevin walked up to the same area as before, his eyes scanning the showroom. He spotted the red sports car, the one that had caught his eye last time. A young salesman, his face familiar, stood nearby, scrolling through something on a tablet. Kevin walked over, trying to keep his demeanor casual, nonchalant. The salesman looked up as Kevin approached. There it was again, that flicker of skepticism, the quick assessment of Kevin's appearance. His expression barely shifted, but Kevin could see the dismissiveness in his eyes. "Back again?" the salesman asked, his tone polite but flat. "Can I help you with something?" Kevin smiled. "Yeah, I'm actually interested in this car. I was hoping to get some more details on it." The salesman's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to remember Kevin from before. "This one starts at $250,000, he said, his voice careful, almost rehearsed. "It's not exactly a standard purchase. Are you familiar with what's involved in buying a vehicle like this?" Kevin kept his smile nodding. "I think I can manage. I just wanted to hear about some of the features, maybe even test drive it." The salesman hesitated, his lips pressing together in a thin line. Kevin could almost see the thoughts turning behind his eyes. This guy doesn't look like he belongs here. Just like before, the salesman's demeanor shifted, becoming colder, more condescending. "Test drives are usually reserved for serious buyers," the salesman said, his tone sharper now. "We typically require proof of intent, a deposit, or pre-approval. You understand, of course." Kevin felt a wave of frustration, but he kept his expression calm. He glanced over his shoulder where he knew Marcus was standing, just out of sight, filming. He turned back to the salesman. "I get it, but I think I'm pretty serious. I'd really like to learn more about this car." Before the salesman could respond, another voice joined the conversation. Once again, it was a customer. Kevin looked over to see an older man dressed in an impeccably tailored suit standing nearby. He had a bemused smile on his face, his eyes scanning Kevin dismissively. "Look, kid," the man said, his voice dripping with condescension, "these cars aren't for everyone. Maybe you should stick to something a little more practical. Leave the sports cars to those of us who can appreciate them." Kevin's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding together. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay composed. He knew the cameras were rolling, capturing every second of this interaction, but it didn't make the sting of those words any easier to swallow. The salesman smirked, apparently emboldened by the customer's words. He turned back to Kevin, his tone filled with feigned sympathy. "He's right, you know. These cars aren't exactly for casual buyers. It's a significant investment. Maybe you should come back when you're ready to make a serious commitment." Kevin nodded slowly, letting the words wash over him, feeling the anger boil just beneath the surface. He remembered his mother's words. "You're not proving your worth to them. You're proving that we're all worthy of respect." He had to keep that in mind, no matter how much he wanted to lash out. "Got it," Kevin said, his voice steady. He looked around the showroom, his eyes lingering on the cars that surrounded him, each one a symbol of status, of wealth, each one a reminder that, in their eyes, he didn't belong here. "Thanks for your time," he said, turning on his heel and walking out of the showroom. His heart pounded, his chest tight with a mixture of emotions, anger, frustration, and a sense of vindication. He had gotten exactly what he had expected, exactly what he had come here to capture. But it didn't make it any easier to accept. Outside, Marcus and Tasha were waiting, their eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and support. Marcus stepped forward, clapping Kevin on the shoulder. "You good?" he asked, his voice low. Kevin let out a long breath, nodding. Yeah, I'm good. We got it, right? Tasha nodded, her face serious. We got it all. Every word, every look. It's all there. Kevin looked back at the showroom, the glass facade reflecting the bright California sun, as if mocking him. He turned away, his gaze shifting to Marcus and Tasha. This is just the beginning, he said, his voice filled with determination. Now we show the world. They drove away, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. The silence in the car was heavy, filled with the unspoken truth of what they had captured. This wasn't just about Kevin. It was about every person who had ever been judged, every person who had ever been made to feel less than. And now they had the proof. Kevin knew that what they had recorded would spark conversations, would make people uncomfortable. But that was the point. It wasn't about making people feel good. It was about making them see the truth, no matter how ugly it was. He looked over at Marcus, a small smile playing on his lips. You know what's next, right? Marcus grinned. Oh, I know. We go back. This time, we do it big. Kevin nodded, his eyes glinting with determination. Exactly. We're not done yet. The day had come for the second part of Kevin's plan, the big reveal. The team had spent days poring over the footage they captured at the car showroom, replaying every moment, every smirk, every dismissive word. They knew they had something powerful, something that could not be ignored. The next visit was going to be different, and Kevin felt a mix of emotions. Part of him still carried the sting of that first encounter, but now he was ready to turn that humiliation into power. Today was about turning the tables. It was early afternoon when Kevin pulled up in front of the luxury car showroom once more. This time, everything was different. He wasn't dressed in his casual hoodie and jeans. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, and a luxury watch that gleamed in the sunlight. His entourage followed: Marcus, Tasha, and a couple of others from his team. This time, there was no attempt to blend in. Kevin wanted everyone to know that he was someone who could afford any car in this place without batting an eyelid. He stepped out of his car, a black Range Rover with tinted windows, onto the polished concrete of the showroom's parking lot. Marcus gave him a nod. Remember, man, you've got this. Don't let them make you forget it. Kevin nodded, a slight grin pulling at the corners of his mouth. Trust me, this is going to be fun. Tasha walked up to him, handing him a small microphone. You're live, she said, her tone steady. They'd decided to stream the visit, letting the audience witness it in real time. Kevin's heart beat a little faster. He wasn't just exposing the truth, he was letting the world watch it unfold with him. He could feel the weight of the camera on him, though it was barely visible. A small crew was set up nearby, ready to catch every angle, while Marcus discreetly filmed with his phone. Kevin straightened his suit jacket, took a deep breath, and pushed open the showroom doors. The moment he stepped inside, there was an immediate difference. The same cool, conditioned air greeted him, but the staff's reaction was drastically changed. Where before they had barely spared him a glance, today they were suddenly attentive. The young salesman who had treated him with such indifference during his last visit looked up, and his eyes widened slightly. Kevin saw recognition flicker across his face, and it was clear the salesman knew exactly who was standing in front of him now. Good afternoon, sir, the salesman said, his voice carrying an entirely different tone, one of respect, almost reverence. He walked over quickly, his face now a mask of politeness. Welcome back. How can I assist you today? Kevin smiled, but it wasn't the light-hearted, easy smile he usually wore. It was a smile with an edge, a smile that said he was in control. "Oh, I think you know what I'm here for. I'd like to take a look at some of your cars, maybe even take one for a test drive." The salesman nodded, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "Of course, Mr. Hart. We have a great selection today. Let me show you around." Kevin followed him, his entourage trailing a few steps behind. Cameras were rolling, both hidden and in plain sight, and Kevin could feel the energy of the moment, the tension, the scrutiny, the knowledge that the world was watching. He could see it in the way the salesman kept glancing at him, his smile too broad, his gestures overly animated. He was trying too hard, and it was obvious. Kevin led the conversation, asking questions about different models, pressing the salesman on features, details, and performance. This time, there was no hesitation, no doubt about Kevin's ability to purchase whatever he wanted. The salesman answered with enthusiasm, his previous arrogance replaced by eagerness to please. As they moved through the showroom, Kevin noticed the older customer from his previous visit, the man in the tailored gray suit. The man's eyes met Kevin's, and a flicker of recognition passed across his face. Kevin held his gaze for a moment, his expression neutral, and then turned away, ignoring the man just as he had been ignored before. The salesman led Kevin back to the red sports car he had admired during his last visit. "This is one of our finest models, sir," the salesman said, his voice practically dripping with enthusiasm. "And if you're interested, we can arrange a test drive right now." Kevin looked at the car, running his hand over its sleek hood, just like he had before. But this time he felt none of the hesitation or insecurity. He knew exactly what he was doing. He turned to the salesman, his eyes locked on the young man's face. "You know," Kevin said, his voice carrying across the quiet showroom, "it's funny. Last time I was here, I asked about this car, and I was told it wasn't for people like me. You said I wasn't serious enough to even consider buying it. Do you remember that?" The salesman's face went pale. His eyes widened in shock, and he stammered, clearly taken off guard. I'm not sure, sir. I think there must be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." Kevin cut him off, his voice firm but calm. "You judged me because of how I looked, because I wasn't wearing a suit, because I didn't look like I belonged in your little world." He paused, glancing around the showroom. "But guess what? I do belong. And so does anyone else who has the money, no matter what they look like or where they come from." The showroom had gone completely silent. The other staff members had stopped what they were doing, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Kevin could see Marcus filming from the corner of the room, capturing the entire confrontation. Kevin turned back to the salesman, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "The problem," Kevin continued, "is that this isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's ever walked into a place like this and been made to feel like they weren't good enough. And today, we're showing the world that it's not okay." He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. He held it up, showing the live feed to the salesman. The comments were rolling in, messages of support, of outrage, people sharing their own stories of discrimination and judgment. "This," Kevin said, "is what happens when you judge people by appearances, when you make assumptions without knowing anything about them." He put his phone away, his gaze still fixed on the salesman. "Now, let's see if we can do better. Let's see if we can treat everyone who walks in here with respect, whether they're in a suit or a hoodie." The salesman swallowed hard, his face flushed with embarrassment. I apologize, Mr. Hart. That was never our intention." Kevin smiled again, this time a genuine smile. "I hope so, because respect shouldn't be reserved for people who look like they have money. It should be for everyone. He turned, walking away from the salesman and back towards Marcus and Tasha. The weight of what he had just done settled over him, but it was a good weight, a feeling of purpose, of having stood up for something that mattered. He had faced down the same people who had dismissed him, and he had done it on his own terms. Outside, the California sun was bright, the air warm against his face. Kevin looked at Marcus, who gave him a thumbs up, his face split in a wide grin. "Man, you killed it," Marcus said, his voice filled with pride. Tasha stepped forward, her expression one of admiration. "That was powerful, Kev. People needed to see that." Kevin nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. "It wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. Today, we showed them that they do." They climbed into the Range Rover, the tension of the past hour slowly dissipating. Kevin felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The showroom was behind them, but what had happened there would resonate far beyond those glass walls. As they drove away, Kevin checked his phone, scrolling through the comments. People were talking, sharing, reacting. The video had already gone viral, sparking conversations about class, respect, and prejudice. He looked up, watching the city pass by through the window. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He wasn't done yet. There were more showrooms, more barriers to break, more people to inspire. Kevin leaned back in his seat, a satisfied smile on his face. Today, he had made a difference. Today, he had shown the world that no one should ever be judged by what they wear or where they come from. And tomorrow, he'd keep fighting, keep pushing, keep inspiring. Because everyone deserved respect. And he wasn't going to stop until the world understood that. The aftermath of Kevin's second visit to the luxury showroom was explosive. Within hours of the live video being posted, it had gone viral. Millions of views poured in, and the comments were relentless. People were angry, not just for Kevin, but for everyone who had ever faced the sting of prejudice and judgment. The hashtag #RespectEveryone began trending, with users sharing their own stories of facing discrimination in places where they were judged by how they looked rather than who they were. Kevin scrolled through the messages that evening, his phone lighting up with notifications every few seconds. The stories were overwhelming. People of all walks of life sharing experiences of being dismissed, belittled, and overlooked. It wasn't just about car showrooms. It was about high-end stores, job interviews, restaurants, places that should have welcomed them but instead made them feel like they didn't belong. The response was beyond what Kevin could have hoped for. His experiment had struck a nerve, and the ripples were turning into waves. He set his phone down, a mixture of satisfaction and heaviness settling over him. It was incredible to see the impact, but it was also a stark reminder of just how common these experiences were. The following morning, Kevin was still absorbing the response when his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was an unknown number, but the area code was familiar. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" "Mr. Hart, good morning. This is Daniel Rhodes, the general manager of the Beverly Hills dealership you visited recently. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Kevin leaned back in his chair, raising an eyebrow. He wasn't expecting this. "No, not at all," he said, his voice calm. "How can I help you?" There was a pause on the other end, and Kevin could almost hear the discomfort in the man's voice. "I wanted to reach out personally regarding the incident at our dealership. We've seen the video, and I want to extend our sincerest apologies for the way you were treated. That is not the experience we want our customers to have, and we deeply regret that you felt disrespected." Kevin stayed silent, letting the words hang in the air. The apology was what he expected, carefully worded, an attempt to mitigate the damage that had been done. He wasn't surprised, but he also wasn't impressed. "I appreciate the apology," Kevin said, his tone measured. "But this isn't just about me. It's about how your staff treated me, and how they probably treat others who don't look like what they expect a serious buyer to look like." "Absolutely, Mr. Hart," Daniel said quickly. "We are committed to making changes. We're already reviewing our internal policies and providing additional training for our staff to ensure this never happens again. We value all of our customers, and we want to make things right." Kevin could hear the desperation in the man's voice. The dealership was in damage control mode, and he knew they were scrambling to salvage their reputation. "All right," Kevin said. "What are you proposing?" "Well," Daniel hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "As a gesture of our sincerity, we would like to offer you a complimentary vehicle from our showroom, any model of your choosing. We want you to know that you are always welcome here, and we hope this can begin to make up for the experience you had." Kevin couldn't help but laugh, a short, humorless sound. "You want to give me a car to make this go away?" "No, sir," Daniel replied, his voice hurried. "We don't want to make this go away. We genuinely want to show our appreciation and regret for what happened. It's just a gesture." Kevin shook his head, his smile fading. He knew what this was. It was an attempt to buy his silence, to turn this whole situation into a neat little package that could be wrapped up and forgotten. But he wasn't interested in that. This wasn't about a car. It was about change. "Look," Kevin said, his voice firm, "I don't need a car. What I need is for your dealership to actually do something meaningful. If you really want to make this right, then put your money where your mouth is. I want you to take whatever that car would cost and donate it to a cause that actually makes a difference." There was silence on the other end, and Kevin could almost picture Daniel's stunned expression. He continued, not waiting for a response. "I know a few organizations that are working to create equal opportunities for young black entrepreneurs. That's where the money should go, not into a car for me." The line was silent for a long moment before Daniel finally spoke, his voice more subdued. I understand, Mr. Hart. If that's what you wish, we would be more than happy to make that donation. We truly want to make this right." Kevin nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "Good, because this isn't just about me. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what I did. I'll have my team get in touch with you about the details." "Of course," Daniel replied. "Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this right. We will do everything we can." After ending the call, Kevin leaned back, exhaling deeply. He knew he'd done the right thing. Accepting the car might have been easy, but it wouldn't have changed anything. A donation, however, could actually make a difference for people who needed it. He picked up his phone and called Tasha, explaining the conversation he had just had with the dealership manager. Tasha listened quietly, and when Kevin finished, she let out a low whistle. "Damn, Kev, that's powerful. You really turned this into something positive." "That was the goal," Kevin said. "I'm not interested in free cars. I'm interested in seeing some real change. And if we can use this moment to do something good, then that's what we're going to do." Tasha was quiet for a moment, then her voice softened. "You know, you're making a lot of people proud right now. Not just your fans, but everyone who's ever dealt with this kind of crap. You're showing them that it's okay to stand up, that they don't have to just take it." Kevin felt a lump form in his throat, and he cleared it, his voice a little rough when he spoke again. "That's all I want, Tasha. I just want people to know they deserve respect, no matter what." The news of Kevin's refusal of the car and his demand for a donation spread just as quickly as the initial video had. People praised him for his integrity, for refusing to let the dealership buy their way out of the situation. It wasn't just about a viral moment anymore. It was about action, about taking a stand. A few days later, the dealership held a press conference. Kevin watched it from his living room, the television tuned in as Daniel Rhodes, the general manager, stood in front of a small crowd of reporters. Daniel looked nervous, his suit a little too tight, his smile a little too forced. "We want to sincerely apologize for the experience Mr. Kevin Hart had at our dealership," Daniel said, his voice carrying over the buzz of cameras. "We have reviewed our policies and are making significant changes to ensure that every customer, regardless of appearance, is treated with respect and dignity." He paused, glancing down at the notes in his hands. "Additionally, as per Mr. Hart's request, we will be making a substantial donation to an organization that supports equal opportunities for young Black entrepreneurs. We are committed to learning from this and doing better." Kevin watched, his arms crossed over his chest. It wasn't perfect. He could tell the apology was more about public relations than true remorse, but it was a step. The donation was real. The promise of change was real. And that was something. The press conference ended, and Kevin turned off the television. He leaned back, looking out the window at the Los Angeles skyline. There was still so much work to be done, so many minds to change, but this was a start. He had taken something that could have been just another moment of pain and humiliation and turned it into an opportunity for real, tangible change. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. It read, "Proud of you, bro. This is how we make things happen." Kevin smiled, typing out a quick response. "One step at a time, man. We're just getting started." He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Changing people's attitudes, their prejudices, was a long and complicated process. But he also knew that every step mattered. Every stand made a difference. And as long as he had a platform, as long as people were listening, he was going to keep using his voice. Because this wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever been dismissed, belittled, or made to feel less than. And he wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. It was early in the morning, and the Los Angeles sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges as Kevin Hart sat at his kitchen table, sipping his coffee and scrolling through his phone. The recent events with the car dealership had left him feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. He had exposed the dealership's prejudice, forced them to take real, meaningful action, and sparked conversations across the country. But Kevin knew that if this was truly going to mean something, he couldn't stop here. He had to keep moving, keep pushing for change. The idea for his next move came to him in the quiet of his home, when the noise of the world outside seemed to settle just enough for clarity to emerge. He remembered the stories people had shared with him after his video went viral. So many young people talking about the opportunities they'd missed out on, the barriers they'd faced, simply because they didn't look like what people expected success to look like. Kevin thought about the donation he had pushed the dealership to make and realized that he could do more with it. He could turn this one act of reparation into something that could actually lift people up. He picked up his phone and dialed Marcus. The line rang twice before Marcus's voice came on, slightly groggy. "Kev, it's early, man. What's going on?" Kevin smiled, pacing back and forth in his kitchen. "I've got an idea, Marcus. I'm thinking we take this donation from the dealership and we do something big. I'm talking about creating a program, a school almost, but not just any school, an auto dream school. A place where young people from underprivileged communities can come and learn about the car industry, driving, engineering, design, all of it." There was a pause on the line, then Marcus's voice came back, now fully awake. "You serious? Like a real place? Where they can actually learn about cars?" "Exactly," Kevin said, his voice filled with excitement. "Think about it. We could give these kids opportunities they'd never have otherwise. They could learn to drive, learn the mechanics, maybe even get connected to jobs in the industry. It could be a game changer, Marcus." Kevin could hear Marcus's grin over the phone. "Man, you're always coming up with something crazy. But I love it. Let's make it happen." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and plans. Kevin gathered his team, producers, community organizers, education experts, and they began laying the groundwork for what would become the Auto Dream School. They scouted locations, reaching out to underfunded neighborhoods in Los Angeles where such an opportunity would mean the world. They found a former warehouse, spacious enough to house classrooms, a driving track, and a garage where students could get hands-on experience. The energy was electric. Kevin's idea had caught fire, and soon enough he had partners from all over the city eager to help. Local car companies offered support, automotive engineers volunteered their time, and schools got involved, offering to help identify students who could benefit the most. Kevin could hardly believe how quickly it was all coming together. It wasn't just a school, it was a movement, a beacon of hope for young people who had been overlooked, just like he had been. The day finally came when they were ready to open their doors. It was a sunny afternoon and the courtyard of the warehouse had been transformed. A banner that read, "Auto Dream School, Dream Big, Drive Further," hung across the front, fluttering in the breeze. Rows of seats were set up for the opening ceremony, and Kevin stood at the front, looking out at the gathered crowd. Students, parents, volunteers, media, and even some of his celebrity friends who had come to support the cause. He felt a surge of pride as he stepped up to the microphone. The crowd quieted, their eyes on him, and Kevin took a deep breath. He looked out at the young faces in the audience, kids with wide eyes, full of hope, anticipation, and a bit of nervousness. "Thank you all for being here today," Kevin began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This school, this project, is about more than just cars. It's about opportunity. It's about giving young people a chance to learn, to dream, and to grow in ways that they might not have thought possible. I know what it's like to be told you don't belong somewhere. I know what it feels like to have people look at you and assume you're not capable just because of what you look like or where you come from." He paused, his gaze traveling over the crowd, settling on a young boy in the front row. The boy was sitting with his mother, and Kevin could see the hope in both of their eyes. "But here's the thing," Kevin continued. "We all belong. We all have the right to dream big and to work towards making those dreams a reality. And that's what this school is about. It's about showing the world and ourselves that we are more than what people think of us. That we're capable, we're deserving, and we're going to make it." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound carrying over the courtyard. Kevin smiled, stepping back from the microphone, and watched as the students were led inside for their first look at the school. He walked alongside them, feeling their excitement as they marveled at the classrooms, the driving track, and the garage filled with cars waiting for them to work on. One student, a teenage girl with curly hair pulled back into a ponytail, approached Kevin. She looked a little shy, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Mr. Hart?" she said hesitantly. Kevin turned to her, smiling. "Yeah? What's up?" "Thank you for this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I'd get a chance to do something like this. I want to be a car designer someday, and this is like a dream." Kevin felt a lump in his throat. He reached out, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "You're going to do it," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "You're going to be the best damn car designer out there. Just keep believing in yourself, all right?" She nodded, her smile widening, and Kevin watched as she walked off to join the other students. He stood there for a moment, letting the emotions wash over him. This was why he did it, why he fought, why he refused to let the dealership's arrogance slide. It was for kids like her, kids who deserved every opportunity to follow their dreams, to prove themselves to the world. The day ended with a special event, Dream Day on Wheels, a celebration where families from all over the community were invited to the school to experience the cars firsthand. Kevin watched as children and parents took turns behind the wheel, the joy on their faces undeniable. There were cheers, laughter, and a sense of unity that filled the air. It wasn't just about cars. It was about freedom, about breaking down barriers and making the impossible seem possible. As the sun began to set, Kevin took the stage once more, this time with Marcus, Tasha, and the other members of his team by his side. He looked out at the crowd, at the families, the students, the volunteers, and he felt his heart swell with pride. "I just want to say one more thing," Kevin said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. We're going to keep growing, keep pushing, keep breaking down the walls that hold us back. And we're going to do it together." The crowd cheered, their voices blending into one, and Kevin knew that this was only the start of something much bigger than himself. He had taken a moment of humiliation and turned it into a moment of triumph, not just for him, but for so many others. Later that night, as he stood alone in the now empty courtyard, Kevin looked around at the building that had once been just a dream in his mind. He knew that this was the true victory, more than buying a car, more than exposing discrimination. It was about building something lasting, something that would inspire others for years to come. His phone buzzed, and he looked down to see a message from Marcus. It simply read, "You did good today, man. This is just the beginning." Kevin smiled, typing out a response. "Yeah, and we're just getting started." As he looked up at the banner above the school's entrance, Kevin felt a sense of peace. He had fought back, stood up for what was right, and turned his pain into progress. And as long as there were people who needed someone to stand up for them, he wasn't going to stop, because everyone deserved the chance to dream. And Kevin Hart was going to make sure that they did. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspirational stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new videos. Share this video with your friends and family to spread important messages and support change together. Stay tuned for other stories we have in store for you.